Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming into another video. All right, so happy holiday, happy 4th of July, everybody. I know a lot of us are passionate one way or another. Some people are very passionate about this day and will celebrate it and talk down anybody who doesn't. There are people who out there I've heard as well who would do the opposite, talk down anybody who celebrates it. Uh, I've had some great 4th of July as an American. A lot of times I spent with my mother, spent with family, friends. I was raised around a lot of people from Mexico and South America, and one thing I learned growing up around them is you can celebrate anything. Anything's a good time to come around. Any real celebration can be turned and spent into a positive thing where people enjoy memories amongst one another. So for the sake of celebration, I salute anybody who decides to. In that same breath, I understand there's a lot of bad going on attached to our country right now. It's a lot of bad history that is that we are aware of, and some of us have suffered the ramifications of, and still are at this time. I want to be sensitive to everybody because at the end of the day, I don't know who all follows me. I don't know who all supports me. I don't know who all agrees with some of what I say or all of what I say, or if such a thing does exist. But in your celebration, I ask that you be safe, that you take care of yourselves, that you don't do something that's going to put your life or other people's lives at risk on a day like today. People like to drink, people like to play with fireworks. Take care of yourselves, make sure that you're safe. Um, and if it's in your heart to do so, do consider others who are not safe. Places where America has poured its interest and have deteriorated some of those places. Places where people have come to our country from those places, escaping difficulties, um, and only to find themselves being discriminated against because of it. In the spirit of hypocrisy, when we know this place is full of immigrants, for better or for worse. Most of us who have paperwork are immigrating from somewhere else. So we need to consider the treatment of others, though it's considered fine to treat people who don't have paperwork with respect, to vilify them and act as if they are horrible human beings for not following what we consider the law. The reality is, if it's not a violent crime, we should consider the humanity. It could be good people you're putting in cages. It could be good people you're putting in Alcatraz, alligator Alcatraz. It could be good people you're sending away who could really contribute to what it is that we do here, not only from a financial perspective, which seems to be the most important thing to this country, but from a moral perspective and for a humanitarian perspective, and just from an overall friendly perspective, which should be more important to the rest of us. And so these are things that I'm thinking about. That's what I'm trying to display right here. I'm not going to make a dollar off this video, but I'm trying to show and express the value in humanity, the value in solidarity, and the value in appreciating people's differences, even if they don't agree with me. And I learned a lot of that from people who may not have had paperwork. And so when I see what's going on out there in this country, there are a lot of people who celebrate that because they don't share my moral view. That I feel is their right, but based on my position is unfortunate because a lot of people get hurt off of those perspectives. A lot of people believe about propaganda that's been placed in their faces and in the faces of those who raised them for a long time, that's meant to make it so that you're callous to the suffering of human beings. And I think that that's ultimately why this day is tainted in a lot of people's eyes, as to which, if we didn't feel that way and provide them that display, they would too celebrate with you in regards to your Independence Day. If everybody's not receiving the freedom of independence, then how is it that we can be confused at some who don't want to celebrate it? At the end of the day, balance is what I believe is what's morally correct. Finding a way to be in solidarity with people who don't agree with you, so long as they're respecting your humanity as well. Stay off people's backsides for their differences, and ultimately be willing and unselfish enough to see to it that they have what they need, and to see to it that your reputation is positive in their eyes, which is something that is not necessarily valued enough in this society, at least not amongst those who are considering pushing people away for their differences or vilifying people for not having paperwork. Anyone can write anything in the legislation. We see that with laws every day. We see that with the big beautiful bill. Something was written into legislation this morning that could hurt a lot of people, from what I understand. I haven't read it myself, but listening to the talking points, it's rather scary what's going to happen to people who don't have a lot. And so, as we sit here and we celebrate these type of things, we need to understand that it's only a few people who benefit from such things. Though the propaganda that we believe that it make you support this and make us support this has put us in a position to vilify people for not having paperwork, vilify people for not being on the same side of us as it pertains to our religious beliefs or our political beliefs. But at the end of the day, we all share a slab of land. At the end of the day, we all share the same globe. At the end of the day, we all must eat. We all must take care of our hygiene. We all must keep our mental health in good order. And we're all connected to one another. And so, as we continue to shove some aside, we can't erase their memory. We can't erase their pain. And ultimately, we can't erase what they intend in whatever way they do. So if you make yourself unlikable or unlovable or ultimately an enemy to someone, though you may demand their reaction be at peace, you can't necessarily control their reaction to whatever it is that you do when making yourself a villain in their eyes. So I would caution people who believe that it's okay to write off non-violent individuals as bad people or the worst of the worst just simply because they don't have paperwork that in a lot of cases is very difficult for them to receive. In a lot of cases, unprecedented pains have come their way because of the nature of vilifying people, believing those thoughts, and then from there making it so that we make things difficult for people to get what they need. It first starts with the labeling that people are bad and that people are wrong, even when they're nonviolent. And then from there comes the idea that we're supposed to treat them as if they're the worst, as if they're violent. And then from there comes the culture of pushing people aside. And we've seen it so many different times. And at the end of the day, we still must understand that we stand in the space of hypocrisy when we do so. Because none of us are native to this land, except for the Native Americans, of whom were wiped away and genocided to assure that this land could be what it is. So that's what I want to say. These are things that we don't like to talk about in a lot of circles because it brings about a negative energy to our celebration, and we are very selfish. But it's our selfishness that ruins our reputation around the world, ruins our reputations with our neighbors, and ultimately makes it so that if someday we need to be welcome somewhere, we put that at risk. We assume that what we have is what it's going to be, and that nothing that we do in protection of what it is that we have is going to have ramifications on the globe, ramifications on us specifically going forward. But you don't know what comes next. You don't know what comes next. There may be a day where you need to flee to Mexico. There may be a day when you need to flee to Canada. There may be a day when you need to flee to the Middle East. And you may not be welcome there because of what you did to people. They may make it difficult to you because that's what would be equal. When you made it difficult for immigrants to come to your land. When you vilified them for being illegal. They may write into legislation and you need to do very strange things in order to inhabit their land. But you don't fathom that be impossible because you have it all sewed up, don't you, America? And that is ultimately why we would be caught blindside by the unprecedented nature of needing to flee our land for whatever reason. These are the things I think about when seeing alligator Alcatraz and seeing ICE pulling people off the streets and seeing the big beautiful bill pour $45 billion into ICE. And we're making our reputation worse. We're making it so that if we ever do need to go somewhere else, we get that same energy pointed back at us potentially, if not for the mercy that they would show us for which we didn't show others. And how would we inspire that mercy? I don't know that we would. And who's to say that they would be even as humane as we've been? Who's to say they wouldn't just put us all to slaughter for coming over to their land? This is why I tell you, We need not continue to ruin our reputation by being callous to the suffering of others, by thinking that it's okay to just treat people poorly because you're on top and you don't want them taking what it is you have, because you're the biggest, baddest country in the world and nobody can harm you because you've rigged the game to be in your favor. But I would warn you, unprecedented things do take place. As I've said many times, just 5 years ago, we were in unprecedented terrain dealing with the pandemic and how it changed our lives. It made it so that we were able to see things we had never seen and adjust to things that we were hoping we'd never have to. And so that's why I tell people that a lot of us on a level that isn't one percenters, the wealthy that can't escape, you know, the wealthy would be able to, we would not be able to, essentially. Those of us down here who would have to face the music or whatever would come our way, we can't just fly away. We need to be a bit more careful at how we allow ourselves to be represented out here. And we need to be a bit more intelligent. It's to say that we need to think for ourselves, to understand when we've been played for a fool and had our ignorance weaponized against everyone in regards to how we treat others and how important it is that we treat others properly. Now I'd say when you go out, most of us, if we're sane and if we have the ability to, we make sure we're presentable to whatever our degree would be, to whatever our culture would be. Some of us dress this way, some of us dress that way, but we do shower, we brush our teeth, we make sure that we smell decent, we make sure that we are presentable to the best of our understanding. Why? Because we want a reputation that allows for that, because we don't want to offend. Well, this needs to trickle into other areas of our lives as well. It ain't enough to just wash yourself, brush your teeth, and do all of these different things to present yourself properly. You too have to reflect positively onto the people around you and ultimately to the world outward. And when we go around putting our middle finger up to people from other places, when we go around treating people horribly and allowing for things to happen to people and act like we don't care, what we're doing is inspiring a dirt, so to speak, about our energy, about our reputation, that people will treat us as such. But there's a way to not do that too. Showing solidarity, showing empathy, sharing, caring, and ultimately making sure people have what they need when you have plenty. That's what inspires the good reputation that comes with being clean, which comes with having a good smile, which comes with ultimately not offending others. And then people will welcome you. People will stand in solidarity for you. And if ever there's a need for you to be stood up for, people will be inspired to stand up for you. So that's what I want to say. On the day we celebrate ourselves, despite all the hurt that we've caused, we need to remember that there's a reputation that we wear, a dirt stench that comes about when we're callous. And although it's in the best interest of many who have a lot to keep us in a position from which to wear that stench so they can benefit from it in whatever clever ways they do, we need to be wise to say, at the end of the day, though we've been coerced in one way or another, it's still our responsibility to be responsible for our reputations and ultimately for our cleanliness, so to speak. Responsible for that. So that's what I want to say, man. A lot of times, a lot of people don't know how to think for themselves. A lot of people are too emotionally tied up in memories of celebrations to ever listen to someone who tells you not to celebrate. But at the end of the day, it's time for us to step outside of what's comfortable to us, step outside of what we've known all our lives, and to fathom the idea that we've been coerced in one direction or another, that people have played us for a fool in a lot of cases so that we would do what it is they want us to do, so that we could pour money into the things that they want us to pour money into and ultimately be distracted by the things that we celebrate in a lot of cases. And as a result, we're not pointed in the direction for which to learn how to be clean, so to speak, as it pertains to our reputations, how to care and be empathetic to pains that ultimately we've never faced. And we end up being sociopaths, so to speak, to the suffering that we cause with our indifference. And when the wrath of whatever comes of that hits us, we'll be caught off guard, and that's unnecessary. That's unnecessary when people like myself are planting the seed that such a thing is existing and that we need to do something about it. You should not be caught off guard. So that's my whole point of view. I think we need to spread that word, not sway away from the ugly realities of our country as we celebrate ourselves, not sway away from the pain of our silence as it pertains to silence being violence in the suffering of others. We need to step up. You know what I mean? I understand that we've been taught that politics are something that should be considered if you're interested in it, and otherwise swept aside for the interests of what it is that we focus on. But at the end of the day, we have a stronger responsibility as we awaken to the understanding that what we do causes pain to others, to have more of these conversations in places that are not comfortable for us to have it, which is why I do the channel in the way I do it. I'll talk about my interests and I'll talk about things that may be considered political, because that divide should no longer be a divide. While we celebrate ourselves and our interests, people are suffering off of our tax dollars. People are suffering while they need our voice to be loud enough to speak on what it is that they're going through. You know, people are suffering and we're not allowing ourselves to focus in on being a solution to their suffering. But when we suffer, we want others to focus on us. It doesn't equate. Either you're inspired in yourself and step out on a limb and be there for somebody else, or when it comes your way, expect that you won't receive it either. It's a cold world because people have been coerced into a space where they only care about what they care about instead of caring about what is necessary for them to be a solution to others' suffering. Once we start to figure out that conundrum in regards to our cultures and the way that we operate, then will the world start to warm up, so to speak. It'll be easier for people to get what they need, and it'll be more likely that we celebrate it when we're in our time of need. And so that's what I want to say, man. Happy 4th of July. I feel sorry for everybody who's suffering just the same. And it's okay for me to share space in my brain for both of those thoughts simultaneously. I don't have to separate them. It's not going to be too tough on my mental health to consider my favorite sports team and consider, you know, the difficulties of being an undocumented person in this country, or being someone in the Middle East genocided, killed, vilified, all in the same breath. My name is BDF44. I thank you all for watching. Wow.